Alright, welcome to today's lesson on random numbers. So far in the programs we've created, we've been making them so they've been actually very predictable in what they do. They either have code set out specifically to do something, or they've had code that does something in response to the user's input. But this can make for some very boring programs. If you try and play a game where you know the exact same thing is going to happen every single time, well, that game's not going to be very challenging. So a lot of times when we write code, we want them to have some sort of randomness built into them, so it makes it a little bit more exciting. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to actually generate that random number, and then how to use it to create something that's a little bit more random in our world. So actually creating random numbers in Alice is very easy. It's done as a world function called random number. And what this does is it returns a decimal value randomly between 0 and 0.99 that you can then use in your program. And even more conveniently, if you don't like a number or you don't want a number between 0.99 and 0, you can use the More tab to select some options for this function. Specifically, you can choose the minimum value, the maximum value, and whether or not the value returned is going to be an integer, if this is true, or a decimal number, if this is false. So let's take a look at an example of what I mean. Here we have a variable called number, and I'm going to set its value to a random number between 1 and 5, and it must be an integer. A second example shows me that I'm going to have that same variable, and now I'm going to set it to a random number between 2 and 4, and this time, because integer only is false, I'm going to get a decimal number. So if we want to look at some example programs where we could use this, here's one. In this program, I'm going to have a tortoise, and the tortoise is going to move forward a random distance between 0 and 1 meter. And I've put some bars here in the world that are spaced 1 meter apart so we can sort of see the difference in the distance that he's moving. To do this, I've created a variable called distance. And I've set up a loop here that's going to run 3 times so that I can see him moving a different amount each time he moves. Inside this loop, I've made the distance variable, and I've set it to a random number between 0 and 1, and it's going to be a decimal number. The tortoise will then tell us how far he's going to move, and then move that distance. So let's take a look. Okay, so he moves 0.7, 0.7, and 0.3. And if I do it again, you can see that each time I do it, he's moving a different distance, ending up in a different location in the world. Okay? A second example of this would be to have a goldfish that can move randomly in 3-dimensional space. So again, what I'm doing here, well, I'll show you how it works first. So you can see my fish moving randomly all over the place, kind of like he normally would. Although this fish can back up, which is maybe a little bit weird. But you can see how each time I do it, that fish is going to end up in a completely different location depending on the random values that I get. Okay? So to do this, I've set up 2 variables this time, a minimum value and a maximum value. And again, I've set up a loop so the fish will move 10 times. Each time I'm going to have the fish move in the up and down plane, in the left and right plane, or towards us and away from us, and the forwards and backwards plane, all at the same time. And the random value it's going to move is between minimum number and maximum number. Now I've only had it move up, left, and forward. I haven't done the opposite. I haven't done back, down, and right. The reason for that is because I've used negative values here, and a negative value will actually allow me to move in the opposite direction. So if you think about it this way, if I move negative up, I'm really moving down. If I move negative left, I'm really moving right. And if I move negative forward, I'm really moving backwards. So by generating a random number between a negative value and a positive value, I'm actually going to be allowed to be able to move both forwards and backwards depending on what that random value is that I get. Okay, so I'll show it to you one more time. You can see here we're moving down and sort of forwards. Oh, and our fish just kind of randomly disappeared. Oh, there. Oh, and he's gone. Alright, so that's it for today. We'll see you in class tomorrow when we can discuss what we've learned.